Hello everyone, I am Dr. Hunain, resident physician in physical medicine and rehabilitation from Pakistan. I welcome you all to another very interesting episode of our interview with a physiatrist. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome Dr. Farooq Rathore, who is the head of Department Rehabilitation Medicine at PNS Shifa Hospital, Karachi, Pakistan. He is also the national representative of Pakistan at ISPRM and AOSPRM, Asia Oceania Physical and Rehabilitation Medicine Society. He is the executive board member and representative of the low middle income countries at the Cochrane Rehabilitation. To his credit, there are more than 147 publications, of which 4 are textbooks, 38 original articles. He has also peer reviewed in 40 journals and is also an editorial board member in 7 national and international medical journals. Apart from being an expert physiatrist, he has also developed profound communication skills and is popular for his excellent workshops for topics like research, scientific misconduct, communication skills, medical writing. To his credit, he has also conducted 92 face-to-face conference workshops in more than 5 different countries all over the world. So let's welcome Dr. Farooq Rathore. Thank you very much, Dr. Farooq, for being with us here today. How are you and how's everything at your end?
Thank you, Dr. Hunain. Thank you very much for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to share my experience and talk to my colleagues all around the globe. So thank you very much.
So can you tell us about your journey in PM&R so far? PM&R is still not well known in Pakistan. So what inspired you to join this field as a career?
Okay, so this is an interesting question, and it actually takes me back like 20 years ago when I passed from medical school and I joined what we call in Pakistan house job. Honestly speaking, my reasons for joining PMR, I would say, they are not that heroic as people expect, but I was very clear right from the start. So just to say, number one, I wanted to join a specialty where I could be able to maintain what we call a work-life balance. I come from a family of physicians, and many of my relatives, they are into what we call the frontline specialties: cardiology, pulmonology, internal medicine, and critical care medicine. And I had an idea how a bit different and difficult their work-life balance was. So first of all, honestly, I wanted to go to a specialty where I could maintain this kind of balance, number one. Number two, I wanted to explore a specialty, in which I could do something and which was sort of unexplored in my own country. And when I joined residency in PMR back in year 2005, it was probably January 2005. At that time, there were less than 20 qualified physicians in PMR in Pakistan. And I thought it would be a good idea to join the specialty where I could make a mark for myself and do good for my patients. And the third reason was probably, when I was doing my house job, I wanted to join a specialty where I was able to make a difference in my patient's life. And I saw that, the patient with acute problems, they received a lot of, but patient who had disabilities and specifically long-term disabilities like stroke, multiple sclerosis, brain injury, and particularly spinal cord injury. These were the people who were actually placed at the end of the wards. They were the patients who actually very few consultants visited. And most of the time when they visited, all they wrote was, the patient is stable, please continue treatment. And many a time, these patients ask these questions like, doctor, what's going to happen to me? You simply give me medicine. Will this medicine help me regain my health? Will I be able to walk again? I want to join my job. And I could see on the faces of my senior colleagues that they did not have any clear answer. And it was during those board rounds that I actually met one of my mentors and my teachers, Dr. Zahid Rustam. He was actually at that time a senior resident in physical medicine rehabilitation. And that gentleman used to do ward round after the medical team had left medical, and that gentleman used to spend extra time with patients with stroke, spinal cord injury, and other disabilities. He actually used to talk to them one by one, and he actually used to engage the whole family. So I found that model very different from the traditional medical model that I was taught in medical school. I explored it further. I got in touch with Dr. Zahid Rustam and other colleagues, and I thought, PMR is my calling, and it is something that I need to do. And honestly speaking, I'm really glad I made a good decision. And after 15 years, I would say that, I achieved almost all my goals. So this is my background of story of joining PMR as a resident.
Wonderful. I'm sure this is truly an inspiring, motivational story and your background for our PM&R youth and upcoming residents. What is your point of view as to why PM&R is a less popular specialty choice amongst residents and trainees across the world?
Thank you for saying why PMR is not a first line specialty for many people all around the globe. First of all, I would say probably it is the financial reasons, because we need to understand and admit that probably PMR is not as glitzy and would not give you that kind of financial stability that other so-called medical or surgical specialties, like for example a trauma surgery or an orthopedic surgeon or maybe a plastic surgeon can bring, right? And this is how real world works. And the second is something, like sometimes residents or medical students, they are more involved and they want to do something which, gives them that kind of kick. So what my colleagues say, PMR is basically a so-called cold specialty. We do not see that kind of many emergencies. And there are students who actually want to deal with these kind of emergency, trauma, and that kind of life in the fast lane. So probably they also don't want to come to this specialty. And the third factor that actually is very relevant, at least in Pakistan and most of developing countries, is that once the undergraduate medical students do not have any exposure to rehabilitation medicine, they don't get rotation in rehabilitation wards, they don't know what physiatry is all about, they don't know what are the principles of disability management and how can PMR make a positive difference in patients' life. Sometimes they do not even consider PMR as a career choice once it comes to residency. So this is what I think is relevant in different parts of the world, depending on their own background and cultures.
Thank you for giving us an insight and sharing your perspective regarding PM&R as a career choice. As a successful physiatrist, researcher, international speaker, and national representative of your country at multiple international forums, what would be your advice for residents and early career physiatrists who have just began their journey as a career for this specialty?
Okay, thank you again for this very interesting question. And again, whenever you ask such question, actually it takes me back in time when I started as a young researcher, as a young resident, without much support and training. So I would rather answer this question quoting some of the quotes that I really like, and I have been using these quotes in my presentation. I have been using these quotes with my colleagues. And a couple of them I would like to recall. So for example, one of them is, it was probably by Michael Joe, that the greatest danger for most of us is not that our aim is too high and we miss it, but it is too low and we reach. So I would rather say to my young colleagues, physiatrists and PMR residents, that whenever you start in life, and I would rather say it's a life mantra and it's a life advice. So this is what our life mantra, and actually I shared this with my colleagues during my presentations as well. And a couple of these quotes include, the first one is by Michelangelo, and it says, the greatest danger for most of us is not that our aim is too high and we miss it, but it is too low and we reach it. So whether you are a resident or a faculty member, I would strongly recommend that whatever you decide in life, think big and, be crazy, be big enough to dream differently. Start small, but think out of the box. And please remember, what matters in life is actually what goals you have, what kind of energy do you bring in, and how much committed you are to achieve those goals. It doesn't matter that you're a resident from a developing country or you're a faculty member from a place where you do not get institutional support. What matters is your vision and your goal. Second is, probably we are living in an internet era which has made many things easy for us. But unfortunately, when I look around, I see that many of my colleagues in developing country who often complain that they do not have access to good resources tend to forget that in the 21st century and in the internet era, you have many resources available online. And as they say, internet is a big equalizer. So anyone sitting in any part of the world, irrespective that is in Southeast Asia or maybe Northern America, Europe, Australia, China, he is almost the same on resources. And these is to become a better person and a better professional. So for all my young residents out there, please remember you are adults and we have to follow the principles of SDL, self-directed learning. which dictates that each one of us is actually responsible for his or her own personal and professional growth. So as they say, it doesn't matter how many resources you have. If you don't know how to use them, it will never be enough. So please go online and explore those resources. And the last word of advice I would share with you is, probably it was Nicholas Bellamy who said that whatever we have becomes of double value whenever we have a chance to share it with others. Please remember, there are only two ways of spreading light: to be the candle or the mirror that reflects it. In every day of our life, every movement is a learning, teaching movement. Either you learn something or you teach something. So please make sure that whatever you learn, you try to disseminate that knowledge, because teaching is the best form of learning. And the more you teach and train others, the more it's going to come back to you and will help you become a successful professional and person as well. So these would be my 2 cents on how to become a good resident or a professional or even a human being. Thank you.
Indeed, these are invaluable piece of advice, and I'm sure that it will be of a great help to all those who are planning a successful career ahead. Dr. Farooq, it has been nearly a half a year since the emergence of COVID-19 pandemic. And in your opinion, what opportunities it has brought for PM&R physicians, and how can one make the most out of it?
So it takes me back to my first year residency when I was a student. I was our first year resident back in 2005. And in Pakistan in October 2005, we had that great earthquake. And that earthquake resulted in thousands of disabilities. And as one of the residents working at the largest rehabilitation centers in the country, I had a chance to be the frontline worker to work with those kind of disabilities. And working with this disability actually helped PMR in Pakistan to make other people realize the value of an interdisciplinary rehabilitation. And I would say the same principle apply to this global healthcare challenge of COVID-19 pandemic. And I would like to give you two food for thought. Number one, in the initial days, specifically in 2020, all of the focus was actually on the acute care management of COVID-19. And it was the need of the day. I don't disagree with that. But more than a year has passed, and now we have something which is documented in literature as long COVID, long haulers, or chronic COVID. Now, these are the subgroup of COVID-19 patients who do not have any active symptom of COVID-19. Their reports are totally normal for COVID-19, but unfortunately, there's still complaints of lack of energy, fatigue, myalgias, depression, psychological issue, and they can't go back to life. They can't enjoy their exercise. They can't join their offices back. This is what long COVID or chronic haulers of COVID-19. I would strongly recommend that every PMR physician in any part of the world, they should actually take up this opportunity and not only provide services to these patients, but also document what this long COVID is and let people realize that there is something in which PMR can play a major role. Number one. Number two, initially it was thought that probably COVID-19 is a respiratory pathogen and respiratory illness. But, many case reports as well as long and systematic review have clearly shown that COVID-19 can also affect musculoskeletal and specifically neurological system. And now, based on our previous experience of providing services in neurological disabilities like stroke, myelitis, and other things, we know that PMR has a clear role to play in all these disabilities. So whenever these disabilities occur because of COVID-19, probably it's time for the PMR physician and the rehabilitation team to be proactive and let people realize that acute care is over, and now let us play our own part, because we are the ones who are going to make the patient go back to life as a useful earning member and probably improve their quality of life and mobility as well. So these two things, long COVID and neurological disabilities because of COVID-19, are a unique opportunity for the PMR team to make people realize their true worth all around the globe. Thank you.
Absolutely. It is needless to say that it's very important to think out of the box so that one can avail such hidden opportunities. Moving on to my last question of this interview, what suggestions do you have for our ISPRM social media task force that can help us grow professionally and increase the visibility of PM&R across the globe?
Okay, thank you for this question. And I feel that this task force has one of the most important tasks in the ICPRM. You people are the front face of global PM&R, and you have a responsibility to sort of share the activities of ICPRM with the wider world. And we know that social media is one of the most common tools used by everyone around the globe to connect with each other and to gather news. So probably a couple of things that can probably help you as food for thought in order to increase your influence. Number one, please be proactive and be on the lookout for different events of PMR in different countries of the world. It does not necessarily have to be an international event. Please even promote local events, and that can actually make a lot of difference in that particular country's PM&R. Number one. So the last thing that I would like to recommend to my colleagues is that appropriate use of hashtags can make a lot of difference. So, for example, in a global event like virtual ISPRM that is going to happen in a couple of days, you might want to create appropriate hashtags and then share those hashtags with people all around the globe. And please make sure that during the event there are colleagues who are actively tweeting and using those hashtags to share the real-time events that are occurring. And it would actually increase your global reach in every part of the world. So this is how I think that the social media team can make a lot of difference and increase the influence of global PM&R. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Farooq. This brings us to the end of our discussion today. I'm highly grateful to you for sparing your time. It was amazing to know more about your incredible PMR journey and various opportunities one can avail as a PMR physician and do something different.
Thank you very much for giving this opportunity, and I hope to remain connected with my global colleagues all around the world and contribute my share. So thank you again for giving me this opportunity.